Okay, that's good. Nice. Yeah. You can be seated. Another purple one, right? Thank you for whoever lit those. That slipped my mind. So week 4 is another purple candle for love. 1 John 4:7 says, "Dear friends, let us love one another, for love comes from God. Everyone who loves has been born of God and knows God." 1 John 4:8, "Whoever does not love does not know God, because God is love." It's our candle of love to help us to remember that again, to love one another and to love our neighbors as ourselves. So again, beautiful time of year to be reminded about the importance of love in a day and age where I certainly need a lot more of that. That's for sure. And is it recording now? Yeah. Okay. Now, and so please note, I'm just going to say a couple comments. Oh yeah. I'm sorry. Time for the kids to go. Right? Is that what you're sort of for? Oh no. Yeah. You can get the kids. I'm ahead of myself. And just again, thank you for everyone that's working with the young people. Yeah, good turnout. And again, thank you, Debbie. So this is a quick, nothing to do with the message, ready? So the first couple of minutes has nothing to do with the message. I was going to say something earlier, and then Lord made me think to share it now, where for those that are listening abroad can hear. So admittedly, these first couple of minutes, nothing to do with the message. What I wanted to talk about quick, little mini sermon, it has to do with today is the winter solstice, December 21 at exactly 10:03. So a little side thing is, boy, that tells me the earth and the universe is very ordered. Right. So wait a minute. So when I looked on there, December 21st at 10:03, the fact that that's down to a science that we know it's 10:03 is not, well, some days it's this day, other days it's not, tells me that, again, there's a design behind the universe. But the main thing I wanted to share was I know the pagans claim today, so I know of new people that were, the winter solstice is our day. You Christians that have Christmas. What I wanted to say just very quickly, the winter solstice tells you something about the God you love or serve, and how dare pagans say this is their holiday. So here's what it tells me and why I'm always excited about the 21st. One, God orchestrated or allows this darkness, right? So today is the longest, shortest day, longest period of darkness. So metaphorically speaking, when I think about the winter solstice, I think, well, yeah, but it's God who allowed or orchestrated the planet to be tilting as far back as it does this day, right? So God allows the moments of darkness in our lives. Right? So God allows it. God isn't asleep at the wheel. The fact that for us in the Northern Hemisphere is the longest, the shortest day of the year. But what I'm always encouraged and love to praise God about, and what I wanted to share, was the winter solstice in the darkest day is full of hope, right? So starting tomorrow, we're closer to swimming pools and cookouts and baseball games. And so God shows his faithfulness through the winter solstice, right? So how dare you pagans try to take what our God does? So I just wanted to say with a smile to my pagan friends, God demonstrates that he's faithful, that he's reliable, he can be trusted, because sure as today is the darkest day, tomorrow starts again. We're one step closer to cookouts and springs and joy and happiness. That's all at the hands of God. And lastly, his faithfulness is based on law, the laws of science. I don't know what's that, astronomy or whatever that is, the planetary movement. He can be trusted that starting tomorrow, there's more daylight before we're eating hot dogs at Valley Cats games. That's anchored in the laws of science. Likewise, you can trust God and that he'll be faithful because his faithfulness is anchored in his laws, the word of God, right? So God promises that you can trust me. I'll never let you down. It may look like things are, the boat is shaking in the storm, but I can be trusted. So that's all. Just a couple quick thoughts on the winter solstice. I always get excited on the 21st as one who sometimes struggles with anxiety and depression. It's always hopeful knowing that starting tomorrow, one day closer to summer, because of God's faithfulness. Again, had nothing to do with the message. So now for the message today, the title of the message is Kairos, the opportune God-appointed time. Kairos, the opportune God-appointed time. If you have your Bibles, you can turn with me to Galatians chapter 4, and we'll be looking at verses 4 and 5. Galatians 4, 4 and 5. You're probably thinking, where was the Christmas passage? And in a moment, you'll see this is a hidden Christmas passage. This is a Christmas sermon with a Christmas verse, though admittedly it's not in the Gospels. It was probably around this time last year, and as I think about it, as I was preparing the message, I didn't think about it, but midweek I realized it was probably around this time last year, maybe a week or two ago, a year ago, where I work in my day job. The outgoing executive director had announced her retirement a little earlier in December, and it was probably around this time of the year, the outgoing executive director called me to say, hey, Dwayne, I'm retiring. I wanted to call you to tell you that you should consider replacing me as executive director. Immediately connected to the message, I didn't think about, all the strengths or why I think I can do a good job. My first thought was, I can't, so I didn't say it, but I thought to myself, I can't do that. And so I know finance pretty well, how do you, get organizations loans for what they need. So I know finance, which is like 35,000 feet. I don't know, and I don't have an accounting background. So I take the work that accountants do to make decisions, but I don't know, how did you give me this? So my first thought was, I don't know accounting, and this is a financial institution, so I can't do it. Immediately, it was fear. Almost wanted to hang up on her, right? That you were going to see this about Kairos. It was immediate fear. My mind immediately went to all the reasons why I can't do it. But here's the thing. I also knew deep down I had to pursue it. So not getting into any details, but based on circumstances with what was going on with the organization, what was going on with my colleagues, what was going on with our board, what was going on with our constituents. So I knew that I really didn't have a choice. I had to move, I had to act, even though this wasn't on my time schedule. So if you would have asked me this time last year, what do you want to do? I don't know, keep making loans, wait for my kids to get a little older. My next career move would probably be, I would love to head a foundation where I'm giving out money. It would not have been, nowhere on my radar if you'd have asked me at any point over the last 14 years, do you have any desire to be the next ED of the loan fund? I'd have been like, no, heck no, right? So the key thing is, while it wasn't on my timetable, the opportunity elicited fear. I thought about what all I couldn't do. I knew, based on circumstances and just God in my heart, I knew this was God's Kairos. What's Kairos? And some of you that might know, in Greek, Kairos, and so remember the New Testament was originally written in Greek. In Greek, Kairos means the right critical, I think you see a definition here, the right critical or opportune moment. Right? So when the Bible uses the word Kairos, or if we were to go back in a time machine and you would hear someone talking, Kairos, the word that's translated time, Kairos speaks to the right critical opportune moment. Someone once said, a qualitative opportune time. Different from the Greek word chronos, like chronology, which means linear clock measured time. So if we were in a time machine and go back, chronos, and if we could understand biblical Greek, someone would say, it's chronos to leave church, or it's chronos, it's time to go get something to eat. So that's just like time in a, blah, blah, blah. Kairos, that's translated time, meant the right critical opportune moment. It's an opportunity. Kairos signifies a moment of perfect timing, a fitting season for action, a unique or significant juncture in time. Right? It's an opportunity to move. It's crucial in areas like theology. And what's really behind it is they understood it as it's something that God has orchestrated. Ready? So today's message is on Kairos, the opportune time, the perfect timing of God's doing. It isn't your timetable. You would have never thought to do it. Like going back to my BNED, I never thought that we want to do this, but I knew it was God's timing, He brought the incidences together. It was a moment of action that God had orchestrated, right? So Kairos. Galatians chapter 4, verses 4 and 5, which we'll look at in a second, is a not so obvious Christmas passage that introduces us to the biblical and theological concept of Kairos, the opportunity to strike that's come about you from God's own hands, not your own doing. We're going to see that in a second in Galatians 4, 4 and 5. The big idea or sermon in a sentence today is understand the significance of Kairos and its application to your life. Understand the significance of Kairos and its application to your life. And today we'll quickly look at two truths to help us understand the significance of Kairos, this idea that it's time, but the opportune time. It's the perfect timing. It's something that you didn't ask for, but it's God moving, and it's time for you to strike and move out. The first truth we're going to see is God knows the Kairos moments in your life and in history. We'll see that in Galatians 4, 4 through 5. God knows the Kairos, and if you're at home, it's Kairos, Kairos. If you're taking notes, God knows the Kairos moments in your life and in history. The second truth we'll look at is God determines the Kairos moments in your life and in history. He knows those moments. He determines it. Here's the first truth. God knows the Kairos moments in your life and in history. From Galatians 4, 4 through 5, easy to not understand that it's a Christmas story. Here's the verse, Galatians chapter 4, 4 and 5. But when the set time had fully come, right? The set time, this opportune in God's omniscience and all-loving thinking, now is the time, and you'll see next, it's about Christ's birth. But when the set time, this opportune time, this perfect time, when the set time had fully come, God sent his son, born of a woman, born under the law, to redeem those under the law, you and I, that we might receive adoption to sonship. Right? Galatians 4 speaks to the fact that, but when the set time had fully come, this Kairos moment, this perfect timing, Christ was born at the right, critical, or opportune moment. God knew it was perfect timing to address humankind's greatest challenge, which is our sin problem, right? Humankind's greatest issue is not the right political party in charge. It's not better education systems. It's not if poor people had more rights and assets. All those things are great to move for. But humankind's greatest challenge is that by birth and by choice, we're separated from a holy God. So God knew now's the perfect time, around 4 BC, to have Christ be born. Well, we don't know why God chose this exact time. Again, historians, theologians think it was around 4 BC. Well, we don't know why God chose that exact time to bring Christ in the world. Here's some reasons, but I'm going to make a point. Here's some reasons. This is more Bible study-ish, and so, but it's just kind of good to kind of know in the back of your head. Theologians, historians know that Galatians 4 tells us that when Christ was born was the perfect, opportune time. So the question is, well, why then? Why not 1,000 years earlier? Why not now? Why was he not born in 1956, right? Why 4 BC, right? Here's some things that's just kind of good to tuck in the back of your mind from a Bible study kind of point of view. Possible reasons why Jesus was born when he was. One reason that I think theologians are in agreement that's pretty clear is that God, of course, orchestrated a cat named Alexander the Great. You may remember from history, Alexander the Great, before Jesus was born, had run roughshod, and the whole Middle East at that time was under the Greek rule. So the Greek language, here's number one. The Greek language was spoken and read universally. So of course, God rose up, and he's mentioned in Daniel, by the way. So long before Alexander the Great was ever born, God predicted that a young Alexander the Great would quickly, in the book of Daniel, I think maybe 2 references, one for sure, prophesied that Alexander the Great would come. So Alexander the Great, before the Romans were calling the shots when Jesus was born, had come and spread the Greek language all throughout the world at that time. Theologians will tell you, and I told you the New Testament was written in Greek, so probably, and the whole point here is we don't know. One of the reasons maybe why God chose when he did to have Christ be born is that the Greek language was read and spoken universally. Greek is any Greek student will tell you, Greek, unlike any language up to that point, is very specific. So God, knowing he wants to communicate who he is and what he is through the New Testament, chose this time to be for Christ to be born, so that those who would write about his life in Greek are using a very specific language. Unlike any language at that time, it's unique to language today. Greek is very specific in communicating something. So for example, I can say, I love the Bills, I love my kids, and I love Burger King. You're like, oh, wait. You love your kids, you love the Buffalo Bills, you love Burger King. You're like, well, what do you mean? Or bored, the famous one, I sit on a board, I was bored the other day. But Greek is very specific in terms of the most famous example is love. So love in English is love. I can love my wife, I can love my dog, and I can love the Buffalo Bills. Ready? Greek is very specific with its multiple words translated love. Agape, which you've heard of, God's love, the love that puts someone else above another. Phileo, friendship love, like Philadelphia, right? So loving your spouse might be different than phileo, the guy you hit golf balls with. Eros, as in erotic, is the kind of love like I have for Bridget Moynihan. So I have the more love that's more lustful, that's more, a lot of people think they're in agape when it's really eros, it's more a lust-based love. It's not really measured. So one reason why maybe God allowed Christ to be born when he was that God had orchestrated Alexander the Great to spread Greek all over the known world, so that Christ would be born and that Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Paul would be writing in a very specific language that was just perfect for communicating the New Testament. A second idea is that the Romans created a universal communication system by that time, right? Greek was spoken everywhere, so God knew that, hey, here's a common language that everyone can be able to read. It's a great language for me to be specific about who I am and who Jesus is. Second idea, maybe why Christ was born when he was, the Romans had created the first ever universal communication system, the paved highway. So before the Romans, roads were just picture unpaved roads. The Romans were the first to think, what would be nice? A little rock, a little stone, most likely Jesus helped build the roads. Let's make it easier. Selfishly, the Romans had paved highways to make it quicker and easier for tax revenue to go from the world at that time into Rome. But God used that to spread the gospel. Christ was born, and now you have basically, think of modern day highways. Now people can more quickly share the good news that Christ was born. A second reason maybe why God chose that opportune time around 4 BC, really in the spring, even though we celebrated Christmas, for Christ to be born. The third and final one, a big reason why this was the opportune time, is that the Roman emperor worship was the perfect template for the reality of Christ. In the Roman Empire, when Jesus was born, you were forced to worship the emperor, the king of Rome. So God, I think, knew that, this is a perfect template. These idiots are thinking that this Roman emperor is, here we go, things like this one idea of divine association. So if you were a Roman citizen alive back then, you were taught through propaganda that the emperor occupied a unique space, a figurehead who was both a man and a symbol of divinity. Emperors like Augustus and Caesar, you may remember from school, were seen as having divine attributes. Sounds similar, right? Familiar? Or being, quote, sons of gods, linking their rule to the divine will. So, of course, we know those human emperors were not sons of gods, fully human, fully God. God used that as a template to show, or they would say part man, part God. Christ was fully human, fully man. Fully human, fully God. So this whole idea of the Romans thinking that, well, the emperor, the king, is, this godlike figure who's executing the will of God. Of course, that template is a lie to Roman emperors, but it helps us to see the truth of who Jesus is, the one who truly is fully God and fully man. The last point about this one is the emperor at that time was known as the eschatological man, meaning the ultimate human, right? So the statues are always ripped and cut. So maybe truth be known, some of those emperors weren't as built as the statues, but the term eschatological man meant that the human emperors were the ultimate example of what a human should be, That's a great template. It's a lie, but it's an excellent template to communicate the truth that there would be a king, the Lord Jesus Christ, born in 4 BC, who is the ultimate human, the ultimate example of what a human should be. Right? So again, we don't know, but we do know, well, maybe God thought this was the perfect time because the Greek language was spoken everywhere. It was universal. So the good news of Christ being born could be spread universally. It was a specific language so that God can be specific on who he is and what his will is. The Romans created a universal communication system, the paved highway for the first time in human history, so people were able to more conveniently, quickly go spread the good news that Christ was born. Roman emperor worship was the perfect template for the reality of Christ. So the claims, a lot of verses you read in the New Testament about Christ were borrowed from what pagans were saying to the Roman emperor. So again, a great template for who Christ really is. God knows the right, critical, or opportune moment. God knows the perfect timing, the fitting season for which, while we can only guess, like again, theologians and historians provide that, we can only guess, but God knows. God knows when it's time to move and act. Here's the second truth. God determines the Kairos moments in your life. God knows those opportune moments that come up in your life, but he also, secondly, he determines the Kairos moments in your life and in history. Esther chapter 9, verses 9 through 14. So again, if you're taking notes, it's Esther chapter 4, verses 9 through 14. Here's some background before we look at Esther. By the way, if you've not read the Bible in a while, or maybe you've just finished a book, or you're like, I don't know where to start, or I want a New Year's resolution, try the book of Esther. And just a little trivia thing. Esther is the only book, just to kind of incite you to try to read it tonight before bed or in the morning or whenever you read. If you've not read Esther in a while, read it. I'm a hypocrite. I'm going to try to do it myself. Esther, I haven't read in a while. Esther, trivia-wise, Esther's the only book in the Bible that doesn't mention the name of God, nor any kind of, synonym for God. Yet it's a book that's full of God's fingerprints. But it's just a good, fun book you haven't read in a while. Literally, it should be a movie, and I guess it has been made in a movie or a play. So Esther, Bible trivia-wise, if you're ever at a bar and it's trivia night, name the only book in the Bible that doesn't use the name of God. And you'll be able to say, Esther, right? Esther never uses the name of God, but yet his fingerprints from chapter 1, verse 1 through the end of the book are all over, right? So Esther is a great book to read if you haven't read it in a while, if you want to get some entertainment, some great, humor, awesome book to read. So here's some background. A cat named Mordecai, right? Mordecai has made arrangements. I'm sorry, that's wrong. I just realized Haman. I'm sorry, am I writing it down? Haman was this evil man. He's like the villain in it, but this is real, it's a historical fact. Haman had made some arrangements for all the Jews to be killed. They were living within the Persian Empire at this time. So king, I think Xerxes is the king, but the Persian Empire is ruling the world at that time. A man named Haman has made arrangements for all the Jews to be killed. Esther, you see here this picture of maybe what she looked like. Esther is the queen of the Persian at that time. So you just need to know Haman, I don't know if the verse mentions his name. Haman had made plans for all the Jews to be killed. Mordecai is Esther's first cousin. So biologically, it's her first cousin, but Mordecai was really serving as her fill-in dad. Her mom and dad had died, so Mordecai was really her father, like an acting father, but blood-wise, it was her first cousin. He was much older and basically being her father. So the people that kind of know for background, Haman orchestrates this plan to have all the Jews throughout the Persian Empire killed. Mordecai is Esther's first cousin, but really father figure. Esther is queen, so she's inside the royal court. And in a moment, you're going to read this passage. I always picture like Mordecai outside the gates trying to get this message to Esther. So we join Esther 4, 9 through 14, when Mordecai is trying to communicate to Esther inside the royal palace that through this cat you're going to hear in a moment, Hathach, trying to get Esther the news about the plot that Haman has to kill the Jews. So here's Esther chapter 4, 9 through 14. Hathach, you don't have to remember, just a kind of middleman communication dude. Hathach went back, and this is Esther 4:9. Hathach went back and reported to Esther what Mordecai had said. What did Mordecai say? Mordecai was saying that, hey, look, Esther, you got to get this message that Haman has set up this thing that we're all going to get killed on a certain date. Verse 10, then she instructed Hathach to say to Mordecai, all the king's officials and the people of the royal provinces know that for any man or woman who approaches the king in the inner court without being summoned, the king has but one law, that they be put to death unless the king extends the gold scepter to them and spares their lives. And then Esther goes on, but 30 days have passed since I was called to go to the king. So here's what's going on, right? So Mordecai is like, hey, hey, how you doing, my man? Can you tell my cousin Esther, who's the queen, that Haman has this plan, that we're all going to get killed? Can you get that message to her? So now he goes and says, hey, Esther, can you go talk to the king? This dude, Haman, is going to have all the Jews killed. What you just heard in verse 11 as a cultural thing that the Persian Empire had, or this king had, where Esther is saying, like, I can't go to him. Right? He has to call me. Everyone knows it's a law that if someone just goes walking into the royal court and like, hey, king, can I talk to you about something? I could get killed, right? And then she adds on, look, that's scary, right? I hear this news, but I can't just go strolling into the king's court. I could get killed. And then she adds there at the end, it's been 30 days since I last spoke with the king. Verse 12, when Esther's words were reported to Mordecai, he sent back this answer. Do not think that because you are in the king's house, you alone of all the Jews will escape this plot to have all the Jews killed. Verse 14, here it is. So again, admittedly, it's Old Testament, but it's the Old Testament concept of Kairos. For, Esther, if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place, but you and your father's family will perish. Right? I heard you, cousin. I know you're scared. I know you said it's been 30 days since you talked to the king. I know you can't go in there. But boy, if you just keep remaining silent at this time, this opportune, this moment, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place, but you're going to miss out on the blessing. You and your father's family will perish. And who knows, but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this. Very, very famous verse. I know it's the title of many a women's conference. Who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this? Right? So there's that, even though it's Old Testament, it's pregnant with the New Testament concept of Kairos. If you remain silent at this time, Mordecai was saying, hey, this is an opportune time. This is the perfect timing. God has orchestrated for you to become queen. And who knows, Esther, maybe he allowed you to become queen to act at this Kairos moment, this opportune time for you to make an impact and save the lives of the Jews. Just quick thoughts on how God orchestrates Kairos moments. Kairos moments often spark fear. In Esther 4:11, we saw that. She was like, well, geez, I can't just go walking in there and tell the king, hey, can you help me out? He has to extend the scepter. And what if he doesn't? And I haven't talked to him in 30 days. Here's some practical application. Are you experiencing a Kairos moment? Do you know some circumstances where, like, you know God is talking to you to do something, to act? Maybe it's at work. Maybe it's in your personal life. Maybe it's in your family life. Maybe it's in the church life, right? Are you in the midst of a Kairos moment? Something you didn't ask for, right? I didn't ask to be the ED. I knew it's going to be a bunch of mess. And so in a lot of ways, I tell people I'm loving it and having a great time, but I'm miserable and I hate it. Right? So it wasn't my choosing, but are you facing a Kairos moment? Is God speaking to you about something in your life to take the next step and you're meeting it with fear? Moses had a Kairos moment. It was fear. Jeez, I can't go in front of Pharaoh, the most powerful man, and I'm not a good speaker, right? Me, I don't want this. I don't know accounting. Esther, I'm scared to death. I could get killed. I can't just go strolling into the king. Kairos moments often spark fear. Are you facing a Kairos moment, right? Has God been speaking to you for months now to do something, act, make a decision, and it's just fear that has you paralyzed? Kairos moments often involve fear of a person. In this case, it was Esther and the king of Persia. Moses was afraid to death of the king of Egypt. It could be a person. Is there a person that's causing you fear and why you're not acting? And you know God's calling you to do something and you're not moving it. You know the time is right and you're not striking. Is it a fear of a person? Kairos moments often involve fear of circumstances. Maybe it's circumstances like, oh, I don't want to start a business. The economy is rough. Job labor is stalled. But it's time to move. Maybe it's just other circumstances, right? A young person might be, you've been dating for how many years? Sir, she's the right one. But all the circumstances, I'm not ready to get married or settle down. Is it fear? Kairos moments, right? Girl, you've been dating forever. She's going to walk if you don't put a ring on her finger. This could be your Kairos moment. Don't let fear get in the way. Right? Someone here might be thinking, what our church needs? A blank. I should start a blank. Oh, I can't do it. I'm afraid. What will people think? I'm not talented enough. If God's been speaking to you of starting a program here at church, move. Kairos moments often spark fear. Number 2, God will accomplish what he wants with or without you. You could simply miss out on the blessing, Esther 4:14. Right? God through Mordecai was like, Esther, man, you want to just be quiet and sit there enjoying being queen? God's going to deliver the Jews, right? God is going to do what he wants to do with you. Maybe that's why he allowed you to be queen, or without you. But Esther, you are going to miss out on the blessing. And in that case, it was death. Do you think you and your family, all because you queen, that you're going to get an exemption from this edict that Haman had, that all the Jews were going to get killed? So again, God will accomplish what he wants with or without you. But the bummer, and what I want to encourage you is, but you could miss out on the blessing, right? Esther 4:14. For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place, but you and your father's family will perish. So God said that to me, as much as I was struggling, I'm like, I can't do this. I don't want to do this. Lord, this concept, Lord, it hit me the door. And look, God's going to bring a new ED to the organization, but you may miss out, right? And so I know we as staff, we're worried, well, what if this outside person disrupts the culture? What if this person makes things worse? We're at a perilous time. So God really spoke to me about this. And look, I'm going to take care of this organization that's doing kingdom work with or without you, but you just are going to miss out on the blessing. Let me say that to you now. If God is calling you to do something, to move in your personal life, to move in your financial life, move in your church life, to make a decision, it's the right time, but you're afraid. Just know God is going to do what he's going to do, but don't you want to be a part of the blessing? You don't want to miss out on that, or God knows you don't want to suffer the consequences of inaction. Are you in the midst of a Kairos moment right now? Is God speaking to you about taking action? Circumstances are right. Of course, you didn't ask for it. You didn't go looking for it, but the timing is right. Do you know now is the time to do something bold and you're not moving on it? Is fear holding you back from moving boldly in something God is speaking to you about? Do you understand God is going to accomplish his will with or without you? But don't you miss out on the blessing. Obey him today. So if I could be of an assistance with the message, let me know. If there's something going on in your life utterly unrelated, but this is a great New Year's thing. It's a new year. Oftentimes God brings opportunity, closing out of a season. But I just hope that, you're on the lookout for Kairos moments, right? Be on the lookout. Is God orchestrating stuff? Has he been right there in front of you all along? And then again, don't let fear hold you back. And so do let me know if I could be of an assistance with this or something totally unrelated to the message. Let me know as well. Angels from the realms of glory.